Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy. I usually do sex education videos on this channel, which is a great reason to stick around if you're interested in that kind of thing, which I hope you are, since you clicked on this video, which is definitely about sex education. So please do stick around and you'll have much more of this kind of thing on my channel. Now, I've been doing YouTube videos now for about 3.5 years on sex education, and I often have to talk about things which I don't have experience with. Mostly, of course, that is to do with female issues. Of course, here I'm talking in a medical context, so it is the sex that you were assigned at birth, right? So female issues, which are often about periods and hormonal contraception, that kind of thing. I do my research, I talk about those things in the videos, and generally we're fine with that, yeah? But you may have noticed, even though I have the experience myself, and I am one of these kind of people, that I don't talk about male issues a lot. There are reasons for that, and I kind of want to get into them in this video. But it's much more than about what I do on my channel. It's a problem within sex education itself. So I want to go through a few things here. Firstly, I had 2 bouts of sex education in my schooling years. The first lot was when I was in year 6, which is about 10 or 11 years old. And that was mostly about simple sex education topics for appropriate for those ages. So we're talking about puberty, and the girls were taught about periods, and it was girls. That's how we split things at the time. It was the 90s, we didn't know better. And the boys weren't. The boys were mostly taught about body odour, which is an interesting concept because I'm currently, of course, this is in June, I'm filming this, and it's quite warm, and I have lights, and it's quite, yeah, basically I'm sweating. But it's only me here, so luckily we're fine. Yeah, that's right. The boys were taught about things which everybody gets, actually, and it's because they couldn't think of anything to teach the boys while the girls are off talking about periods. That's one reason of many why you should teach boys about periods. And now they kind of are. So, you know, we've got to 2020 and luckily boys are being taught about periods, but, you know. But the main thrust of sex education, and what I tend to talk about on my channel, because there's no point in me talking about puberty, it's not who I'm aiming my videos at. It's mostly the kind of thing you might get taught when you're in years 9 and 10. So we're talking 14, 15-year-olds, that kind of age. And I don't actually aim my videos at that kind of age group. I aim at young adults, but it's the same topics. This is what you learn from that age onwards, yeah? Now, when I was in year 9, I was taught from a curriculum called APAWS, which stands for Added Power and Understanding in Sex Education. I had to read that off a screen. It was run out of Exeter University, and it was peer-led. So you had students from the university come and teach us various things in sex education, rather than have it done by untrained teachers. Like the teachers that we had were mostly sports teachers. So for its time, which was around the turn of the millennium, it was quite advanced, and we weren't really taught much more than you might be taught in other schools, but we were taught better. There was better learning, there were peer learning and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. That's fine, and that's how it should be done now, and is done in a lot of schools now. I'm talking more about what gets taught, what the subjects are. So traditionally, if you didn't have this program, traditionally in the 90s, right, you were taught by either an untrained teacher or some non-specialist. The curriculum focused on reproduction and STDs, as they were called at the time. We call them STIs now. So sexually transmitted diseases. We call them sexually transmitted infections now. Same thing. You were taught about some aspects of law, mostly around the age of consent and that kind of thing. So obviously when you're talking to 14-year-olds, that's important. So you don't tend to get taught about the position of authority rules on the age of consent, but you do get taught about, you know, in the UK at least, you have to be 16 to have sex, or able to consent to have sex, more to the point. And it's still probably the case that when you have female issues, that the males are not invited to those sessions. They're excluded from them in some way. And they go off and talk about things like body odour and body changes. The thing is, of course, that girls also talk about body changes at least. But what isn't taught are things related directly to males. Now, delivery now is better. So we do have a situation where males are taught about female issues in as far as we're talking about hormonal contraception and that kind of thing. And that's fantastic. However, we still don't talk enough about male specific issues. So erectile dysfunction, sperm counts, premature and delayed ejaculation in a medical problem context. Sometimes we talk about it as you need to hold off, right? And I'm guilty of this as well on my channel, and I'll put my hands up to it. But there is male sexual dysfunction when we're talking about this kind of thing as well. People who are unable to stop themselves coming, or are unable to come at all, or do it after a very, very long time and unable to do it in a timely manner. And we certainly don't talk about pain during sex, apart from very specific things to do with the foreskin. Sometimes we talk about that, but often that's it. And of course, this creates a problem. Why is this though? Well, quite rightly, we are talking about female issues with men as well, with males. So recent improvements to sex and relationships education have been talking about, for example, contraception, periods, that kind of thing with men, talking about masturbation in general, but often the pleasure bit, saying it's fine, it's actually pleasurable, is aimed at the females in the room, and for males it's assumed that it's not a problem. Same for consent. That is often aimed at the women. Either when I was being taught, we were all about no means no. Fine, that's not a wrong thing, but I've had videos before about how that's a bad idea. Consent should be a willing and enthusiastic yes from every single person in the sexual encounter. An absence of a no doesn't mean yes. But again, it's often taught as males have to get consent from females, not everybody should consent, and therefore it's not seen as a problem for males. It's seen as a problem for females, if you see what I mean. There's an assumption that males are consenting anyway. And that is changing, and that's fine. But you can see my point here. Traditionally, certainly up till the last few years, it's been about females giving consent to males to have sex. And there's your problem. There are structural problems here. The first one is something which isn't easily fixed, and that is that the predominant gender of sex educators, in the UK at least, are women. And that's great that we've got so many women that want to talk about sex education, and therefore particularly young women and girls have a better sex education than they used to. But it has to be said that young men are much more likely to listen to male sex educators, men sex educating them, than they are women. So that's a problem in itself. We're not quite in the era of token males on sex education forums and things like that. There are definitely men involved, and that's fantastic. There's just not enough of them. So we need more specialist male sex educators. We also need a more balanced sex education curriculum where indeed all the improvements that have been made in the last decade or so about sex education when it comes to females should absolutely be included, and everybody learns about that. But we don't talk about things which are specifically to do with males. And I need to do some videos on that, I know that, and I hopefully will have some coming in the near future. But it's a problem in the sector in general. If you read books which have been written on sex education in the last few years, they do not concentrate on male issues at all. They either are assumed not to be a problem for men, consent obviously being one which I've brought up, or they're just ignored completely, the things which the writers don't know about, and that's fine, and there's no problem with those books, of course. They are doing good things. They just don't cover male-specific problems. So yes, we need a more balanced curriculum, but we also need resources. And okay, I'm pointing fingers at some sex education charities here who maybe need to point out those resources, make those resources and make them available and campaign on those resources, because we often indeed campaign on female issues and we shouldn't stop that, but we don't often campaign on the male issues, meaning that men and boys get left out. They don't feel like sex education is something that they should know about, should be interested in. I think the last thing we can do to combat this is have young men and boys almost write the curriculum themselves, have them in focus groups. I'm sure this happens already, but maybe it needs to happen more. Have them in focus groups and get them to talk about the issues which affect them. A lot of them, this is why I talk about things like erectile dysfunction, because they won't talk about that in forums, because it either doesn't affect them or won't affect them for some time in the future. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't learn about it when they're 14, 15, 18, 19, 20 as university students and that kind of thing. It's exactly the kind of thing which men specifically don't talk about. And some of the reasons for that is because they've never been taught about it in sex ed classes. So why would they talk about this? It's something that they think doesn't actually happen. If you don't get taught about it, why would you think it happens? So as I've said a few times in this video, it comes back to what I do. I'm one of the only straight, at least, men on YouTube that talk about sex education. I think I might be the only one. Well, even if there are a few out there, certainly nowhere near enough for it to be a group of us, right? If you can fit us all in one room, that's not enough. But I'm not helping myself by talking about generalities of sex education. So things like reproduction, all the rest of it, yes, it involves everybody, yeah? So that's not an issue. But when I don't talk about male-specific issues in my videos, I am perpetuating this problem. So that's something I want to do in the near future, talk about male-specific issues. So here we go. In the comments, what kind of things do you want me to talk about? You don't have to be a male or a man to write those things in the comments. You can be anybody. What do you want me to talk about? Is there anything specific that you want me to cover in my videos? But hopefully I'm not the only channel which is going to talk about this, because otherwise we definitely won't get anywhere. If you follow other sex educators on YouTube or online, social media, then maybe suggest to them some videos which you'd like to see on male-specific issues. If we all do these videos, then the issues are more likely to be covered, not just online, but also in schools and elsewhere. Thanks very much for watching. If you like the video, then give it a thumbs up. You can do that just down below. Don't forget to leave a comment. You can do that below as well. Subscribe, because I make videos more or less every single week on this channel, honest. And click the bell just down below so you are notified as when I next upload. And hopefully I will therefore see you next time. Bye-bye.